I want to ask you all one simple question. Are you digitally curious? Now, I know we have Slido this morning, but I'm going to do this old school. Can you all stand up, please? Make you feel very uncomfortable in the first session. This is how it's going to work. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and if you are doing what I say, you can stay standing. And then later on, if you are doing something you weren't doing, you can stand back up again. So let's start with an easy one. Stay standing if you're on LinkedIn. That's a good start. Okay, everyone's standing. Stay standing if you've Googled yourself lately. Okay, a few people haven't Googled. That's okay. You can redeem yourself later on. Question 3. Who consumes all of their newspapers and magazines digitally? A few people, that's good, back in the game. This is actually a shot of me in 2010 in Sydney, Australia. I just bought my first iPad and I was reading the newspaper and the guy next to me had some paper version. I don't know what he was doing. Who here banks with a digital-only bank like a Monzo or a Starling? Oh, wow, a few digitally curious people, fantastic. Couple more questions to see how digitally curious we are. And this is an important one. Who here uses two-factor authentication on your social media accounts? This is very important. And the one sitting down, by the end of the day, you'll be standing up next time I do this. Final question to see how digitally curious you are. Who here has bought some Bitcoin? There's always 2. Oh, a few more. Give yourselves a round of applause. There we go. They are 6 things that are very easy to do. And the reason I've done that exercise is to see how digitally curious you are. Because in this disrupted world, you need to be leading forward as executives and leaders and working out for yourself what this all really means. Because if you remember nothing from my talk this morning, you're going to have to disrupt yourselves or you'll be disrupted. Now, I speak a lot to legal groups. Last year, I spoke to Taylor Wessing's partner group in Lisbon. I've done a bunch of stuff with lawyers one-on-one and some of the managing partners. And I suppose I understand your industry intimately. I'm not going to stand here today and say you need to drop £10 million on an AI platform because you're a partner-led organisation mostly. I understand how that works. So I'm going to give you some practical advice. And when you're looking to the future, you would always employ the service of a futurist. And my favourite futurist is Arthur C. Clarke. Who knows Arthur C. Clarke? He famously co-wrote Space Odyssey 2001. And back in 1974, he was asked by a journalist, "You've just written this movie called 2001, so what will the world be like?" Here's what he had to say.
Well, with that movie 2001, you're projecting us into the 21st century. I brought along my son Jonathan, who in the year 2001 will be the same age as I am now. Maybe he will be better adjusted to this kind of world that you're trying to portray.
The big difference when he grows up, in fact, if we wanted to wait for the year 2001, is that he will have in his own house, not a computer as big as this, but at least a console to which he can talk to his friendly local computer and get all the information he needs for his everyday life, like his bank statements, his theatre reservations, all the information you need in the course of living in a complex modern society. This will be in a compact form in his own house. He'll have a television screen like these here and a keyboard, and he'll talk to the computer and get information from it, and he'll take it as much for granted as we take the telephone.
I wonder though, what sort of a life would it be like in social terms? I mean, if our whole life is built around the computer, do we become a computer-dependent society and computer-independent individuals?
In some ways, but they will also enrich our society because it'll make it possible for us to live really anywhere we like. Any businessman and executive could live almost anywhere on Earth and still do his business through a device like this. And this is a wonderful thing. It means we want to be stuck in cities, we better live out in the country or wherever we please, and still carry on complete interaction with human beings as well as with other computers.
I just marvel at Arthur's forethought. In 1974, he predicted the internet. The problem is, though, he was looking 30 years out. You haven't got 30 years. You haven't got 30 months, maybe not even 30 weeks. You need to know now, what can we do to make sure our firm is fit for the future? So I'm a practical futurist, and I'm going to give you a guarantee that by the end of my talk, you'll have 3 or 4 things you can take back to the office and your teams next week. But I suppose if you're going to believe anything I say today, you should probably know a little bit about my digital credentials. Why has the lawyer asked me to come and speak to you today? Because I'm clearly not a lawyer. Wonder if anyone knows what this is. Yeah, a few people. That was my first computer in 1980. It's a Sinclair ZX80. It had 1K of RAM, 4K of ROM, and I learned to program, and it was my introduction to this digital world. And a few years ago, my daughter Madeline, she's now 13, we're at the Science Museum in London, and we walked past a display case, and there was the dear little ZX80. And Madeline pointed to it, she said, "Daddy, isn't that your computer you talk about all the time?" "Yeah, yeah." "But it's behind a glass case in a museum. You must be really old." "Yes, Madeline, I'm really old." Remember this noise? I think this room especially probably grew up with this is the way that you connected to the internet. Well, I first went online in 1983. Anyone here born after 1983? Any millennials? A couple, that's a millennial corner over there. Well, I've got some subtitles for some things I'm saying later on. Well, back in 1983, I dialed up things called bulletin boards. And so I would dial up, leave a message, we now call it email. I'd ring back hours later to see if they'd left me a message. And I knew in 1983 that I was hooked on this online thing because my father had to get a second phone line. I was always dialed up and no one could get through. We talk a lot about disruption. And I want to explain to you in an easy way why I think disruption happens, not just for your industry, but more broadly. Disruption happens because of three main forces. First of all, there are high profits. In your industry, taxi industry, media industry, hotel industry, there are massive profits to be had. Secondly, the technology is there. The fact that I can stand here on stage, order and pay for a parcel and have it delivered, we take for granted. And so disruptors see those high profits, they use the new technologies and they attack them. And the third thing is client or consumer demands. Who here is not on Amazon Prime? Yeah, not. Okay, because the other way around, normally all the hands go up. So think about it. You're ordering something on Amazon and you can't get it next day, or you have to go to another supplier. You get a bit annoyed, don't you? Because you're used to that same day or next day service. So think about disruptors out there. They see the high profits, they use technology, and they pander to what the consumers want. Always on, fast delivery, fast turnaround. So as a legal firm or a legal services firm, think about your own business. You already have the high profits. There will be people trying to attack what you're doing, and they will want to give an Amazon-like experience. And we'll talk about that in a moment. Now, normally when we talk about disruption, most futurists roll out the usual suspects and they talk about Uber and etc. I'm going to do that, but I'm going to break down why they actually are disruptors. So Uber actually started life as a limo sharing app. Travis and his friends were at a conference called Le Web some years ago, waiting for a cab, and they said, wouldn't it be great if we could actually get a limo to where we are? They realised fairly soon on that the addressable market for limos was fairly low, and they had to pivot. So even Uber has had to pivot. Airbnb, who has used an Airbnb? Do you know what the air stands for? Air mattress. They started life as a room sharing app where you had a blow-up mattress in your spare room. Again, addressable market fairly low, and they pivoted, and now they're impacting the short-term rental market in London and Paris and New York. So they had to pivot, they had to disrupt themselves. Who here isn't on Netflix? Okay, you're missing out. The Crown's coming up soon. I joined for the Crown. It's worth it. Netflix started life as a DVD mailer service. You would actually get the DVDs mailed to you, and then when streaming services came around, the technology was there. Think of those three forces. They're now dropping $12 billion a year on content. And Apple and Disney and so are catching up. Now, the millennials in the back of the room, before DVDs, there was a thing called VHS tapes, and you actually had to rewind them or you got fined and take them back to the shop. But that's a whole other story. So they're the usual suspects. What can we learn from other disruptors? The one I really like is one called Trove. Who's heard of Trove? They provide on-demand insurance. Here's how it works.
I'm leaving my house now. And as I step outside, all of these things with me are fully insured against loss or damage, instantly. That trick I just showed you, that's Trove. Trove is smart insurance. Unlike blanket policies that cover everything at once, Trove helps me protect just the things I care about. All I have to do is swipe to protect. So, if anything happens, just about anything you can imagine, I know my camera's covered. Trove makes it easy to file a claim through the app. I just answer these questions, and Trove handles the rest. And every time I leave my house, things like my laptop and phone are protected. Trove puts me in control of the things I care about, and that's really smart.
So who thinks they'd use a service like that? It's available now in the UK. Why does Trove work? It removes friction. It removes the friction in buying and claiming insurance. Back to my three-force model. Now, a couple of years ago, I was on stage at an insurance conference, here I am, explaining the Trove model, And straight after my session were a bunch of the CEOs from the insurance company. They said, we're not worried about Trove. But I was standing off stage with their business managers, their strategy managers going, we're petrified about the Troves of the world because they remove friction. So again, think back to your own firm. Don't think the big players or the known players will disrupt your market. There'll be someone waiting to disrupt your market because they see your high profits. And so what we're seeing in the banking market, we've now got these digital-only banks, Monzo and others. Now, they're restricted in some ways in what they can do, but they're unrestricted because they don't need a high street branch and they don't need a network. And a few months ago, when Apple launched the Apple Card, this was a game changer because they teamed up with Morgan Stanley. And when Apple gets into something, when they have an addressable market of 1 billion devices, you know something's happening. And of course, Apple will give you great analytics and all those sort of things. So the digital bank should be worried now that Apple is in that space as well. My final disruptor is my favourite, and I'm wondering if you can guess who it is. If I tell you 63,990, any idea who it is? Okay, another clue, a couple of pizzas, it's not Domino's. Maybe a share price, maybe a logo, anyone guessed it? It's Amazon. Amazon's been around for more than 20 years, and in fact their share price has increased by 63,990% in 20 years. They're doing something right. And in researching why they've done so well, I came across a short interview I'm about to play from Warren Buffett. Now, until recently, Warren famously said he wouldn't invest in Amazon, and asked why, he said stupidity. More recently, he's put some money in. But he has looked at why Amazon is successful. And when you listen to what he says, think about your own business.
With Amazon, he said, we needed the internet. Somebody else spent billions of dollars developing it, but it wouldn't have worked without the internet. He said we needed transportation. Somebody else had already built railroads and UPS and all of that sort of thing. And he said we needed payment systems. That would take billions of dollars to build, but that had already been done by Visa and all along the line. So he took 3 huge requirements where the other guys had spent the money, and then he combined them in a way that he didn't have to spend the money. I was impressed with Jeff early. I never thought he could pull off what he did. And what's really, I mean, I thought he could pull off something, but on the scale that has happened, I mean, it's changed your behavior, you know, it's changed everybody in the office's behavior. And the remarkable thing about Jeff, and everything else, is he's done it in 2 industries almost simultaneously that really don't have that much connection. I've never seen any person develop 2 really important industries at the same time. Here you take cloud services. He thought he would have 2 years of runway. He got 7 years. You do not want to give Jeff Bezos a 7-year head start.
Before the competitors jumped in
any
on cloud
economic race.
services.
So at the same time he's shaking up the whole retail world, he's also shaking up the IT world simultaneously, and you know, I take my hat off to him.
So Bezos needed 3 things he didn't want to pay for: transportation network, communications network, and a payment network. What do you not need to make your business fly? And think about that. Now, Amazon haven't rested on their laurels. They're now branching into delivering at home. Amazon Key actually has an electronic lock and a camera, and they will actually put the parcel inside your door. The delivery driver is able to unlock your door. That solves the last mile problem of your stuff being stolen. And in the US, if you have a Volvo or a GM vehicle, it will actually deliver your parcel to your car. So they've gone beyond that in all the drones. Now, the 2 pizzas, Jeff Bezos has a 2 pizza rule. If you can't feed your team with 2 pizzas, it's too big and you'll get groupthink. So when you go back to the office at your next team meeting, put 2 pizzas on the table and see who goes hungry. I'm not suggesting that's the only way to look at managing teams, but obviously Jeff has done something right. But disruption is everywhere. Who here uses WhatsApp? Yeah, guess how many WhatsApps are sent every day? Try 64 billion. If we compare that with boring old SMS, it's only 20 billion a day. So already these things are massively disrupting every industry. But whole industries are being disrupted, and Deloitte in Australia did a survey. They basically looked at a whole range of industries. Along the bottom here is the time. How long until disruption is going to happen? And the vertical axis is what they call the bang. What's the impact going to be? Let's look at top left, professional services. They're saying that it will take a little while, but it'll be a reasonable bang. But there's a problem with this graph. This graph was from 2012. Every single industry on that map has been disrupted, including yours. And when I worked at IBM in professional services, I'm seeing it being disrupted, and I'm actually talking to the new disruptors even in the consulting space and the legal space. Now, in every room, in every team, I think there are 3 types of people. There are the prayers, They're just praying this is going to go away. I'm going to retire soon. I'm going to change jobs. I don't want to know about this. Then there are the stayers. Now, a little story. I last presented this slide deck in June, and it had a picture of Theresa May there. And back then, that was funny. And I think even today, that's funny, because he's a stayer. He's staying there. Parliament's back today. He doesn't care what's going on. He's going for October 31. People like Boris just want to get it done without the consequences. But the third group I want to invite you all to join are the players. They lean forward. They understand digital. They get curious. Those 6 things we did at the beginning, they go home and they do those things. But I think last year was actually the year of what I call regulated disruption. 2 major events happened that are impacting your industry, whether you realise it or not. The first of it was open banking. Who here knows what open banking is? Not surprised. It's been the best kept secret. The government basically forced the 9 big banks to open up their data so you as a consumer can actually access that and give it to someone else. Now, what will happen after that is it'll be opened up to telcos and insurance companies and utilities, meaning as consumers, you can have your data to be transported around. And banks like NatWest, this is an ad for it. The very basic version is you can have other bank account balances in your app. That's pretty boring. We're going to see more and more of those things. But this is actually enabled by something called an API, or an application programming interface. The best example is an API. If you're on Expedia booking an EasyJet flight, the reason you can do that is Expedia talks to EasyJet using APIs. So when you're receiving client briefs, you're going to start hearing this term, do you have an API? Now, even if you're a law firm, your clients will want to deal with you electronically. So you need to start getting fit for being digital and asking your tech team, can we provide things digitally or we do it in spreadsheets? The second key disruptor last year was GDPR. Now, a lot of people are saying it's a hassle. GDPR is a huge opportunity. The Data Protection Act, as you know, was 20 years old, written well before social media or email marketing. It's brought it up to the 21st century. And when GDPR came in and the Cambridge Analytica scandal happened in March last year, it was a watershed. The fact that the front pages of the main newspapers said, Facebook has done this, consumers are now saying, Facebook did what with my data? Consumers are now starting to be empowered, and your clients will be empowered to say, I want some control over my data. I saw this chart a few years ago. It's actually a few years old now, from a website called How Much. They looked at what is the advertising revenue and what are we worth to these websites. So scan your eye across those ones that you use, and probably the first thing you'll say is, where's my check? If the product is free, the product is me. We are giving our data away, whether we're consumers or B2B clients, to these big tech companies, and you will start to see a pushback. And I think as a futurist, I'm looking somewhat into the future. I think we're not far away from a thing called digital agents. Who here has an executive assistant that manages their travel and that sort of stuff? A few people. I had one at IBM. I had a third of her time. Karen knew everything about me. She knew what hotels I like to stay in, when I like to travel, what the seat was. She could predict things. But this thing you carry in your hand knows everything about you. It knows where you are. It knows your next appointment. It knows your bank balance. So I think we're not far away from having a digitally AI-powered device that becomes our digital agent. And it will do everything for us. It means that when my health insurance is due in November, it will know that. It will go out and do a digital deal with one of my providers and then send back the information. And this is how Google imagines this might happen.
Hey Google, book a table for 2 at El Cocotero on Tuesday at 7.
All right, just in case that's not available, can I try between 7 p.m. and 8 p.m.?
Sure.
All right, I'll call to book under your name and phone number, and I'll update you in the next 15 minutes. Is that okay?
Perfect, thanks.
El Cocotero, how may I help you?
Hi, I'm the Google Assistant calling to make a reservation for a client. This automated call will be recorded. Can I book a table for Tuesday the 12th?
Okay, cool. And how big is the party?
It's for 2 people.
Great. And when did you say they want to come in?
Tuesday at 7 p.m.
Okay, let me check. I don't have 7, but we can do 8.
Yeah, 8 p.m. is fine.
Perfect. And can I get their name?
First name is Anna.
Okay. We'll see Anna Tuesday. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Thanks a lot.
Now, that is not a prototype video. If you have a Google Pixel 3 in the US now, that's available now. And so the Google Assistant will call the restaurant. So you should be aware of this. This is called Google Duplex. And your techies should be playing with this technology because in your firms, think about the mundane tasks that you do. This might be a way to offload some of that. And consumers now can't tell the difference. It means, though, that we're going to have to start writing ads for robots. Even in the B2B world, to get to me, you're going to have to get through my digital agent who wants to block you because it's learnt my preferences. So we should start playing with this technology. Now, Matt did mention that my mantra is to get digital, you need to be digital. And I'll explain what this means. And this is the part of the presentation where it's all about you and what you can be doing to go back to basics and get fit for the future. The next slide I'm going to put up, I call the scary slide. I would take your cameras out about now because everyone seems to want to take a picture of it. This is a bunch of jargon, but every word on this screen will disrupt your industry, your firm, in the next 18 months. Let me say that again. Everything on the screen will disrupt your industry in the next 18 months. And you might say, Andrew, I don't know some of these. That's okay. You can do one of two things. Tonight, go home and play Wikipedia bingo, or ask a young person, and they will tell you what all these things mean. So as executives, as leaders in your firms, you should be leaning forward as a player to say, what is a deep fake? What does that mean? And what does it mean for our firm? I'm going to pick up a couple of them. First of them is blockchain. This is one of the overused hype technologies around. And in fact, a few months ago, I was asked to talk to a bunch of procurement people from the marketing industry about what it meant for supply chain. And I broke it down to base tax. And I said, do you know what a distributed ledger is or a ledger is? Yes, well, this is a distributed ledger. The problem, though, is that blockchain has been associated with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. And because people are greedy, it makes the front page of the paper. But if I ask you, what is the global transaction speed for Bitcoin, what would you think the answer would be? How fast can Bitcoin process transactions globally? 7 transactions per second. Compare that with MasterCard and Visa at 24,000 a second. This is not ready for prime time. So what did I do as a digitally curious person? In November 2017, I bought some Bitcoin. I bought £20 worth. I wanted to see what it was like to hold cryptocurrency. And it became addictive. I was using an app called Coinbase, and as I refreshed every 5 minutes, the price went up, down. I thought, no wonder people are addicted to this. I then realised it would take me 4 weeks and 2 banks to get the money back out again. So by being curious, I didn't lose any money other than the £20. I then knew whether this technology was ready for prime time. So you'll have lots of vendors, maybe some in the room that will come and talk to you about blockchain technology. It has a lot of promise, but please do your own research, understand what it means, so you can understand if it's ready for your firm. The second one I put on the screen was 2FA. Who here knows what 2FA means? Two-factor authentication. If you have a banking dongle like this, you're already using 2FA, and one of my questions was, who's using it on your social media accounts? Next slide's going to scare you. I want you to go to a website called Have I Been Pwned? PWNED. If you put in your email address, or if you're really game, put in your password, you can see whether your email address or password has been hacked. A guy called Troy Hunt in Australia has basically put several billion leaked email addresses and passwords in to see whether it's been hacked. Now, why is this important for a legal audience? You are the last mile of security in your firm. No matter how good your firewalls are, your security protection, if you do something silly, your password will be compromised and your client's data will be compromised and you'll be GDPR non-compliant, as you know. So what did I do? I thought, okay, I better get digital ready. So I use a password manager. I have about 700 different websites I use, and I have a unique 20-digit password for each one. So I use a website or an app called 1Password, which links into Have I Been Pwned to see if the passwords I'm using have been compromised. And back in January, I did a bit of an audit, and I found I had 704 reused passwords, 438 vulnerable, and 602 weak. And I thought, that's bad for a futurist. So I cleaned it up over a period of months, and now it looks more like that. So I'm only telling you this because every audience is like a public service announcement. You need to understand that cybersecurity, you will be hacked. And you'll be hacked because of you, not because of the systems you have in place. But as legal firms, I want you to have a kind of a digital mirror. Have a look at how you appear to your clients and to the market. So if I was a prospective client, how easy it is to do business with you digitally. Do you have APIs? Do you have portals? Do you have a way for me to send information electronically, or is it all in spreadsheets and PDFs? Hopefully not. Think about your digital ambition. And one of those things you can do, which is very practical, is look at the way that you're actually working. Now, many of you probably were around when this photograph was taken. This is a picture of my father's desk in 1970. You'll notice that there is a A couple of phones, the millennials, these are called telephones. And we had two in case one rang and we couldn't get through. And everyone wants to know what that big blobby thing is. That's a calculator plugged into the mains. So your desk may have looked like that years ago, but nowadays, in fact, we see the evolution of the desk. This is a lovely animation. You can see how all the things are being sucked off the desk into the computer. And probably you can remember some of those waypoints when you actually gave that up. And some of you remember the time that someone put a computer on your desk and said, you're now going to be sending emails. And now it's, of course, all on our phone. But if I told you 20 years ago that you'd be carrying around one of these with you everywhere and doing all your business on it, you would have thought I was crazy. Well, in the year 2000, I was that guy.
We'll see huge advances in the area of mobility. 3G, or third-generation mobiles, will allow you to access many different services, even live video from your personal communications device. It's because it won't be called a mobile phone anymore, as it'll be performing many more functions than just a standard telephone. Your 3G device will become your personal communicator, through which all information will be sent and received. We'll be able to connect anyone, anywhere, anyhow.
I wish I had that much hair, but anyway, that's another story. So I was talking about that back then, and I think I was a futurist back then because that's what was actually happening. So let me give you some more practical tips. I want to talk for a moment about collaboration. Now, I'm sure a lot of you have any one of these different tools. Hands up if any of you have these, Slack, Yammer. I'm sure you're all using it really badly. Because when I was at IBM, what I was tasked to do, I ran a global consulting practice to go into companies like yours that had an existing technology and they went, oh, it's failed, to explain how to use it properly. Because it isn't the technology that doesn't work, it's the people. What I did at IBM was a thing called working out loud. There's a great book by John Stepper who talks about this concept of actually telling the rest of the organisation what you're working on. Now you're going to go, Andrew, that's crazy. We've got matters that are private, we can't possibly do that. But what I found in my team at IBM, we actually had 400,000 people we could talk to. We would actually work out loud, explain what we were working on, the problems we were facing, and we would have people from around the world come in and say, I can help you there. And over time, we encourage other people to do that. So if you have one of those platforms, think about how you're using it. And I could do a whole session on that. But one thing that's interesting, the value to an organisation is not what you know, it's what you share. And millennials will come into your organisation wanting to share, and if you don't let them, they will leave. So think about how you have information flowing, and this is something simple you can do. Start to collaborate and share more. Everyone will tell you that you have to be agile. It's not just about sticky notes. In fact, last year I was in Barcelona presenting to Nike in actually a startup office, and as I turned to my right, I snapped this photograph. Anyone knows what's happening here? It's a Scrum meeting. The 5 people there are talking about the development for that week. They're standing up, 15-minute meeting, go back to work. Queen Victoria famously held her household meetings standing up, and they were very quick. So think about how you actually use your time. HSBC recently sent 200 people to a WeWork. They wanted to get them out of the corporate environment, out of the corporate shackles, and I spoke to someone 2 nights ago who's been there. They said they're having some amazing ideas come out because they're free of the corporate structure they are in. So think about doing that. Another thing you need to think about is digital diversity. Do you have people on your board, do you have people on your management team that know all of those things on that slide and see things through a digital lens? You need to be fit for that as well. Now finally, I want to talk about 2 different types of people, 2 different tribes if you like. One is the going digital. Many of you represented here today. You are senior leaders, you know how to get things done, but your digital skills are developing. Then you've got the born digital, who born with an iPhone next to them in the cradle, they live and breathe digital. A way you can get these 2 tribes together is to run what I call a hackathon. Who here knows what a hackathon is? I said this yesterday at a bank, and I said it's not about hacking, it's about hacking ideas. A hackathon will actually allow your young leaders to come together and show their ideas. And you'll find that by doing this, you will actually see as leaders how young people think, and they will have a voice. So I'm going to end things there. We're going to have some questions in a moment, but I hope I've actually shown that you need to disrupt yourselves, or you'll be disrupted. Thank you very much. So we've either got questions on Slido or we'll do it old school with hand in the air and the microphone. Any questions, but they have to be disruptive questions. Who has a disruptive question? And if you don't have a disruptive question, we have a disruptive question there.
Thank you. As a futurist, I was wondering what your views were in how we might cope with a catastrophic cyber crash, so the internet goes down.
Well, that is probably
through some,
yeah.
Malicious or other
Well, think about that as a single point of failure. If you take down the internet, you basically take down economy. And there's one company called Level 3 who actually have about 76% of the internet going through their different, and that they are a single point of failure. So you have to have backups. For example, if I took your mobile phone away today, could you call your loved ones? Do you know their phone number off by heart? Probably not. So think about having backups and those sort of things. Thinking about even having two-way radios to communicate in the company if the all goes down, those sorts of things. It will happen. Every day, everyone is getting attacked. The NHS went down with a WannaCry, the ransom. It's going to happen. But if you assume it's going to happen to you and you have a backup plan, you all do a fire drill. Every month you traipse out in the rain. Have you got a business critical fire drill where you actually simulate turning the internet off? And what do we do? Yeah, great question. But it will happen because it's the single point of failure. Time for one more question? I'm here all day, by the way, so if you don't feel like asking a disruptive question, I'm here all day at the front.
So if you could do... If you could do one thing, or predict one thing, to disrupt the partnership model, the partnership pyramid, what would it be?
It's the billing structure. So at the moment, you are on hourly billing. Once you get machine learning doing things very quickly, there's actually a website called reviewmynda.com or something like that. So you can actually send an NDA, and what it does, the model is if you allow them to scan the NDA and keep it, it's free, or you can pay for it. So what about if someone says, well, we'll scan all your NDAs, normally it takes 3 days and a few £1,000. What about when it's taking milliseconds to do document discovery? So you can't charge for that. So the model will have to change. That is probably the biggest thing I'm seeing in your industry. There's someone who desperately wants to ask a question. Is it a quick question?
So how many different tools are there for each NDA produced? Because that's, I just think that's one of the... NDAs are a really simple thing, and I understand what they're used as a use case. But I reckon I've seen 55 different technologies in the last...
So here's what you do. You offer it as a service yourself. Come to our website. Maybe it's only a low fee, but you retain the client and they can do it on your website and so you offer that service. That's what I would do. All right, I'm here all day. Thank you very much. Enjoy the future.